Hello friends, in last lecture we have studied two different types of charges, that is positive charges and the negative charges. Now today we'll see how charging can be done and the properties of charges, Coulomb's law and Coulomb's law in vector form. So let us start how charging can be done. See, we have a neutral body around us, neutral. But if a neutral body can be charged, yes, it can be charged. So a charging can be done by two ways, that is by friction and by induction. Charging by friction and the another method is charging by induction. So let us see these two methods one by one. So we'll see first charging by friction. How friction can be used to charge any neutral body. See, friction means what? Friction means when two body comes in contact with each other, then friction can be done. Okay. So here, if you want to charge a neutral body which is uncharged, or you can say it is uncharged, the uncharged body can brought near a charged body. So when these two charged and uncharged bodies are rubbed to each other, the charges are transferred from the uncharged body from the charged body. Now, what is the reason why this has happened so? The reason is that, see, we all know that is the atom. Inside the atom we have the nucleus, neutron and proton, and the electrons are revolving around the nucleus. Okay. Now, if you look at here, the electrons are bounded loosely with this nucleus in the atom. So what happens when a charging body is brought contact with an uncharged body? So rubbing is done, and because of that rubbing, what happens? This loosely electrons goes to that uncharged body, and when this loose electron goes into the that uncharged body, it gains electron and it becomes either negatively charged or positively charged. So because of that, charging can be done by the friction. So this is how friction can be used to charge any body. Okay, so the simple method, just rub a charged body with an uncharged body, you will get the uncharged body, either it will be a positively charged or either it will be a negatively charged. How uncharged body is positive, negative? If it takes electron from a charged body, then it becomes negatively charged, and if it gives electron to that another body, it becomes positively charged. So this is how a positive charge and negative charge can be made. Now friends, we'll see our another method, that is what? Charging by induction. So let us see how charging by induction can be done. Okay, in induction method, we'll do one experiment, and using that experiment we can conclude how a charging can be done by the induction method. Let us take a conducting sphere. This conducting sphere is placed on an insulating stand. This is an insulating stand, and we have this conducting sphere. Okay, so I will brought one more conducting sphere near that sphere, and the same thing will be done with this sphere. It will be on a insulating stand. Now here, if we brought a glass rod, suppose I have brought a glass rod which is positively charged rod. Now look at here, conductors, we all know the difference between conductors and inductors. Conductor means the charges which can free easily, that is what conductors. In insulators, the charges cannot free easily. So that is what insulator. So that is the difference between conductors and the insulator. Okay. So now what is the reason why I have kept on this insulating stand? Because if we cannot place on an insulating stand, the charges will flow towards the earth. Now what is the reason? This is the biggest reason, which is called earthing. Okay, any charges, we know that according to that, the earth is a big conductor. Okay, a big conductor. What happens here? Any charge can flow towards the earth. It makes earthing. Okay, earth can take n number of charges. So that is the reason the earthing can be done. And to protect from earthing, place an insulating stand, because if there is no insulating stand, the charges will flow from this sphere to the earth. So that is the reason the earthing can be done. Okay, to save from the earthing. Okay, now if I brought a positively glass rod towards a sphere, now what will happen? See, now right now this sphere is neutral. Okay, it is neither a positive charge or a negative charge. Okay, it is a neutral, means equal number of protons and equal number of electrons are there. Okay, now what will happen when you brought this positively charged rod near this conducting sphere? What happens? The electrons from this sphere to flow towards or transfer toward this, and what happens? This part becomes negatively charged. Now what is the reason? See, what happens when you brought this positively charged rod near this conducting sphere, the electron of this part will try to attract this positively charged rod, and because of that here there will be an excess electron, and because of this excess of electron this part becomes negatively charged. So similarly here there will be a deficiency of electron, and because of that deficiency of electron this part of the conducting sphere becomes positively charged. So this is how this part becomes negatively charged and this part becomes positively charged. Now what is the next step? The next step, I just remove this glass rod and I separate this conducting sphere. So by separating the conducting sphere, this part of the conducting sphere becomes negatively charged, and this part of the whole conducting sphere becomes positively charged. So this is how charges separated. Because what happens, I have separated this conducting sphere from each other and I remove this glass rod from this side. So this is uncharged conducting sphere can be charged by the method of induction. So here we have a negatively charged sphere and a positively charged sphere. A similar experiment will do with a single spherical charge. So let us see how a single spherical charge can be made positively charged or negatively charged. See, now here I will take a single conducting sphere which is on a insulating stand. Okay. Now here I will brought a negatively charged rod. Now what happens again? Now here we have a single conductor. Now what happens? This part of the conductor and this part of this face. Now when you brought this negatively rod near to this face, what will happen? The electrons will transfer this part, and here we have excess of electrons, and because of that excess of electrons this part becomes negatively charged and this part becomes positively charged. Now what happens? What is the reason why this is so? Because when you brought this rod nearer to this face, what happens? The electron which is on this face, they start moving to this part. The reason is that repulsion. Because of the repulsion, they repel from this part to this part, and repulsion, this becomes excess and this becomes deficiency, and because of deficiency this part becomes positively charged and this becomes negatively charged. Now I want to make this conductor positively charged. So what I will do, I just made a earthing. Okay, now how earthing can be done? I will take one conducting wire. I just take conducting wire from this part to the earth. Now the electrons start flowing here from this part to the earth, and the conductor becomes now positively charged. So after removing this rod, the whole conductor is now, it will be a positively charged, because negatively charged are separated by the method of earthing, and the conductor becomes positively charged. Similarly, you can charge conductor negatively by taking a positive charge rod. By taking positive charge rod, you will get negatively charged conductor. So these are the two methods. From these two methods, conducting uncharged material can be charged by this method. So this is called induction. Okay, so charging can be done by two ways, that is charging by friction and charging by induction. In friction, there will be two bodies which are brought in contact with each other, and in induction, they are separated from each other. Okay, so this is how charging can be done. Okay. So now we have a device. The device is called electroscope. Electroscope is a device to find whether a body is charged or uncharged. So this device can be used to find a body can be a charged or uncharged. Okay, so we can use here a type of electroscope that is called gold leaf electroscope. The name is gold leaf. The reason is that we have a gold leaf here. So that is the reason the device is called, the part of electroscope is called gold leaf electroscope. Now in gold leaf electroscope, if you see, it will be inside a glass jar. Here we have a metal cap, and this cap is connected with a metal rod is there, and here at the end of the rod we have a gold leaf. Okay, so this is a glass jar, a metal cap is there, metal rod is connected with this metal cap, and we have a gold leaf. Okay, so if you see, for example, I brought an charged bodies. Suppose this is a charged body. When this charged body is in contact with this metal cap, the charges flow towards from metal rod to the gold leaf. Now what will happen? The gold leaf will move apart. It will move apart. See, the gold leaf will be like this. Okay, now when the charge, if the body is charged, it will move apart. Now what is the reason why it will move apart? The reason is that because see, if charges flow, suppose positive charge is there, so this leaf becomes positive, and this again, and this leaf also becomes positive. So positive, there will be repulsion, and because of repulsion, the gold leaf will, what will happen? It will separate it. Okay, it will move apart. If there is no charge, if the body is uncharged, then the gold leaf remains in the same position. It shows that the body is uncharged. If it will apart from each other, the leaf will apart from each other, then it will be a charged body, and if it remains in the same position, then it will be a uncharged body. So this is how gold leaf electroscope can be used to find whether a body is charged or uncharged. Okay, so this is the device to measure such thing. Okay, so now we see the next topic. The next topic is properties of charges. Okay, we're going to see three properties of charges. We have three properties. We'll see one by one each. The additivity, quantization, and the third one is conservation. Okay, so we'll see one by one each. Now the first one is additivity. Now what is additivity? Additivity means the charges has a nature of additivity. The nature of additivity means the charges can be added easily. It means the total resultant charge will be a algebraic sum of other charges. Algebraic sum of other charges. For example, if I have three charges, suppose I have Q1 is plus 1 microcoulomb, I have another charge Q2 which is of minus 2 microcoulomb, and another charge of Q3 which is of plus 5 microcoulomb, then so the total charge will be Q equals to Q1 plus Q2 plus to 3. So we'll get plus 1 microcoulomb plus minus 2 and plus 5 microcoulomb. So adding this, we'll get 5 plus 1 6 minus 2, that is 4 microcoulomb. Okay, from this we can know that the charges are additive in nature and that can be added algebraically. Okay, now let us see the next property of charges, that is called quantization of charges. Okay, so what does it mean? What does it mean, quanta? Quanta, we all know quanta means a bundle of energy. The energy always comes in the form of bundle, or energy always comes in the form of packets. So similarly, charges are also comes in the form of packet. Okay, so to know the second property of charges, quantization, we use a relation, that is Q equals to NE. Okay, by knowing experimentally that the charges are always an integral multiplication, it will be always an integral multiplication of a minimum value, and that minimum value is minus or plus or minus 1.6 into 10 to the power minus 19 coulomb. Okay, so here the value of n will be 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so the minimum value is, it is experimentally founded, the minimum value is plus or minus 1.6 into 10 to the power minus 19 coulomb. So if the value is 1, that is 1 into 1 multiplied by this. If value is 2, that is 2 multiplied by 1.6 into 10 to the power minus 19. And if we place 3, so 3 into 1.6 into 10 to the power minus 19 coulomb, and so on. So the minimum value is 1.6 into 10 to the power minus 19 coulomb. That is the minimum amount. Okay. From this, the value of charges cannot be below this. There is not possible. The charges are not possible. Okay. The minimum value is this only. So that is what quantization. So charges are quantized. Quantized means they always comes in the form of packets. They always come in the form of bundle. That means a minimum certain amount of charges are always present. Okay. So that is what we call quantization. Okay. So the next we will see, that is called the property which is called conservation. Okay. The next property is our conservation. The third property, conservation law. The charges are obeying the conservation law, that means conserved law. Okay. So according to the law, in a isolated system, the charges always remains conserved. They always remains conserved means they always remains constant. Okay. So let us take one example. Suppose I have NaCl. If ionization of NaCl is done, we have two ions, that is the sodium ion and the chlorine ion, that is the positive and the negative ion. Okay, but after ionization we'll get this two ion, but when this two combines, the reverse process is NaCl. That means that if it is ionization there, they split and again they added up and they will becomes neutral. So here we can say that according to this three properties, the charges, the summarization is this: the charges are additive in nature, they can be added easily, they are quantized, that means a certain minimum amount is there always, and the charges are conserved, they always remains constant in an isolated system, means in a system where charges are always constant. Okay, so it obeys the conservation law. Okay, so these are the three important properties of charges. Okay, now we'll move forward and we'll see little about charges. The charges is denoted either by small capital Q or small q. The SI unit of charges is it is measured in coulomb. Okay, and the symbol is C. We can also use its CGS unit. The CGS unit is state coulomb. It is state coulomb or ESU. ESU means electrostatic unit. Okay, so we can either use straight coulomb or electrostatic unit in CGS. So there is a relation between the SI and the straight coulomb, that the 1 coulomb equals to 3 into 10 to the power 9 straight coulomb or ESU. As we know that the coulomb is very bigger unit. So generally the charges are measured either in millicoulomb, microcoulomb and picocoulomb. Now we all know that the millicoulomb is 10 to the power minus 3 coulomb, the microcoulomb is 10 to the power minus 6 coulomb, and picocoulomb is 10 to the power minus 12 coulomb. So generally it can be used because the unit is bigger, so we are using milli, micro or pico as a unit. Okay, so let us see how many coulomb, that means how many electrons are there in 1 coulomb. So that actually we have seen in 10th standard. So again we'll use the formula, the relation, and by knowing the relation we can know that how many electrons are present in 1 coulomb charge. Okay, so we have to find n number of electrons. N is called number of electrons here, n is called number of electrons, Q is our charge, and E is charge on electrons. Okay, so we have to find how many electrons in 1 coulomb charge. Okay, so by putting the value 1 and the charge on electron, that is 1.6 into 10 to the power minus 19 coulomb. So generally we are taking here minus, we can take for electron, and for positive we can take positive charge. So that taking this 19 minus 19 becomes 19. 1 divided by 1.6, it is 0.625 into 10 to the power 19. By taking in up to 1 decimal position, we'll get 6.25 into 10 to the power 18 electrons. Okay, see, in 1 coulomb charge, we have this much amount of electrons, that is 6.25 into 10 to the power 18 electrons. So that is why the coulomb is a very bigger unit, and because of that reason we are generally preferring to use the units such as milli, micro and pico. Okay, so this is what about how many electrons are present in 1 coulomb. Okay, we'll go forward, we'll move ahead, and our next important topic is what is Coulomb's law. Okay, now we'll see a very important topic in electrostatic. Okay, in a scientist whose name was Augustin Coulomb. Okay, in 1785 he formulated this Coulomb's law. He done an experiment in torsion balance, and he found that the law between the two charges when they are at rest. Okay, so what he formulated, let us see. So according to Coulomb, when these two charges are stationary, they are at rest, and the distance between these two charges is small r, given by small r. Okay, so according to Coulomb, he said the electrostatic force between these two charges is directly proportional to the magnitude of the charges and inversely proportional to the square of the distance between them. So actually it obeys inverse square law. What does it mean? That if you increase the distance between the charges, the force decreases. Okay, if you decrease the distance between the charges, the force will increase. Okay, now combining these two, we'll get F is directly proportional to Q1 Q2 upon R square. It means if you increase the magnitude, okay, it will increases. If you decrease the magnitude, it will decreases. Now the removing the proportional sign, we have K, that is Q1 Q2 upon R square. This K is called electrostatic force constant. Okay, this K is called electrostatic force constant. Okay. Now here the K is very important. So this K is generally, it depends on the value of K is, it depends on the medium. Okay, let us see the medium. What is medium? Okay, so the value of K will be, let us find the first unit of K. K equals to F into R square upon Q1 upon Q2, that is Newton meter square, Coulomb into Coulomb, that is Coulomb square. So that is the unit of K. Okay, so now the experimentally approximate value of K is 9 into 10 to the power 9 Newton meter square per Coulomb square. So that is the value of K. Now here this K is very important, as we have found the value of K that is in free space, or we can say that is in vacuum actually. Okay, but when we change the medium, the value of K will also change. Okay, so right now the value in free space we have taken, that is 9 into 10 to the power 9 Newton meter square per Coulomb square. Okay, so now exactly we can say that what is K? The K is 1 upon 4 pi epsilon naught. Okay, so this is called, the symbol is called epsilon, that is called epsilon naught. Okay, so here the epsilon will change when you change the medium. So when you change the medium, the value of this will also change, and the value of K will also change. So epsilon is called actually permittivity in free space. Okay, permittivity in free space, the value of epsilon is in the free space. Okay, so now we have the value that is 9 into 10 to the power 9 Newton meter square per Coulomb square, and K equals to 1 upon 4 pi epsilon naught. Okay, so it means what? So here what we have found, the Coulomb's law, actually it is in vacuum. So when you change the medium, okay, the changing the medium, the value of K will also change. Okay, so by combining this all, we'll get a Coulomb's law, that is 1 upon 4 pi epsilon naught Q1 Q2 upon R square. So this is what our Coulomb's law. Okay, now can you find the similarity? Yes, so this is actually similar to our gravitation law. Yes, that is what given by Mr. Newton. Okay, so this is in the only difference is that this is in the electrical form. Okay, and that is in mechanics. Okay, there we have two masses, and it also obeys inverse square law. Okay, here this is Coulombic force. Okay, now what is the similarity actually? The similarity is that in gravitational force, and this is called electrostatic force or Coulombic force, that there we have masses. Similarly we have charges here, it obeys inverse square law. Gravitational force also obeys inverse square law, but gravitation law and the gravitational law of gravitational force, we have only law of attraction. Here we have both attraction as well as repulsion. Okay, and this next thing is in gravitational force, it does not depends on medium, but here the value of F depends on the medium. Okay, so that is the similarity and dissimilarity between the gravitational force and the electrostatic force. Okay, so let us see, let us define Coulomb again. See, for example, Q1 and Q2 equals to 1. Suppose it is 1, the value R is also 1. By putting here, we'll get, we have 5, 4, 1 upon 4 by epsilon naught. So that is actually 9 into 10 to the power 9 Newton. Okay, so now we can define 1 Coulomb. Okay, so now what is 1 Coulomb? 1 Coulomb charge, we can define as that 1 Coulomb charge when when the charge is same, or either they are similar or dissimilar. The force between is 9 into 10 to the power 9 Newton when they are kept 1 meter apart. Yes, when they are kept 1 meter apart, 1 Coulomb charge is there when they are kept 1 meter apart from each other. So you can define 1 Coulomb charge by putting the value of Q1 Q2 1 Coulomb and the distance is 1 meter. So this is how you can define 1 Coulomb. Okay, so this is what about the Coulomb's law. So this Coulomb's law is very important in electrostatic. That means when charges are at rest, they are stationary. we can use this formula to find the force between the two charges. Okay, this is law. This is what about Coulomb's law. Now let us define Coulomb's law again. So according to Coulomb's law states that the force of attraction or repulsion between two charges is directly proportional to the product of the magnitude and inversely proportional to the square of the distance between them. And this force acts along the line joining the two charges. Okay, now this is what the Coulomb said. Now we'll see more specific and we'll go towards that Coulomb's law in vector form. As we know that force has a direction, so according to that we have to find Coulomb's law in vector form. Now this is our diagram. Suppose two charges are placed in a free space q1 and q2 that has a position vector r1 and r2. See, we have two forces F12 and F21 and direction is unit vector given by r12 and r21. So here, see, here the two charges are in repulsive force, that means they are repelling each other. So this is a repulsive force, so that means these two charges are positive charges, they are greater than 0. Okay, now what is F12 here? Force on charge 1 due to charge 2, that means F12, force on charge 1 due to this charge, and F21 means force on charge 2 due to this charge. Okay, now direction, if you see the unit vector R12 it shows direction, it is going from charge 1 to 2, and R21 shows that it goes from 2 to 1. Okay, and we have a position vector. Okay, that position vector OA is the R1 vector and OB is the R2 vector. Okay, now we all know the unit vector means vector upon its magnitude, that is R21. R21 means R vector unit vector 21 upon the magnitude of this vector. Okay, so let us see how it will work. Okay, so in vector form we can say that the force F12 is 1 upon 4 pi epsilon naught q1 q2 upon r square. The unit vector will be r21. Okay, so the force on 1 due to charge 2, what we have found, force on 1 due to charge 2, so the direction is 2 to 1 because it is coming towards 1, so that is the direction is 2 to 1. So we have taken this for this force. Okay, F12, for F12 we have taken this direction, so that is R21. So that is why we multiply the direction with this unit vector R21, because R21 means direction from 2 to 1, and we are also finding the force 2 to 1. Okay, now here by putting this formula of unit vector, we have now this unit vector upon the magnitude, so this will multiply by this, so we have formula q1 q2 vector 21 upon r cube. So this is the formula we can use. We can also be more specific, as according to this position vector, we can say that the value of the vector R21. So we can also define R21. Now what is R21 here? If we want to find R21 from this triangle, okay, so we can say that the value of R21 will be R1 minus R2. Okay, and the value of R12 will be, it will be R2 minus the R1. Okay, so putting here, we can also write this to 1 to get exact formula. So q1 q2, by putting in this equation, see, this is, suppose this is equation 3, this is 1 and this is 2. Now putting this 1 here in equation 3, so we will have, instead of R21 we will write R1 vector minus R2 upon the magnitude of this, that is R1 minus R2, the whole cube of this. Okay, so this is what more specific. If you want to find it more specific, then the formula will be F12 1 upon 4 pi epsilon naught Q1 Q2 R1 minus R2, and the magnitude of this R1 minus R2 whole cube according to this formula. Okay, we can also define, we can also say for similarly, you can also define similarly, you can also define F21. Okay, now what will be F21 will be? It will be 1 upon 4 pi epsilon naught Q1 Q2, that is unit vector R12 and R square. So it will be again according to the formula of unit vector, we have R vector 1 2, that is R square, that is R. We can also write this as a R12, this as a R12. So by multiplying the magnitude, we have 1 upon 4 pi epsilon naught Q1 Q2 R cube 1 2. This is magnitude and this is vector 1 2. Okay, again placing this 2 in equation 4. By placing 2 in equation 4, we have F21 equals to 1 upon 4 pi epsilon naught Q1 Q2 upon this becomes, see, this R12 becomes R2 minus R1. So it becomes R2 minus R1 the whole cube, and this is R2 minus R1. Okay. So this is the more specific formula for in the vector form. Okay. So this is how Coulomb's law can be defined in the vector form. See, this is formula for repulsion. You can also make formula for attraction. Okay, for attraction the direction will be changed. Here the direction will be like this because they are repelling each other. Okay, for attraction the direction will be, the unit vector direction will change. Okay, the formula is similar, the only thing is that the direction will change. Okay, so understood. So this is what Coulomb's law in vector form. Okay. Okay, our next topic is dielectric constant or relative permittivity. Okay, this one is very very important, as when two charges are placed in any medium other than air, the force between them is greatly affected. Permittivity is a property of the medium which defines electric force between two charges situated in the medium. What does it mean? It means when the two charges is placed in air or vacuum. So when you place the same charges, same distance in another medium other than air or vacuum, their forces will change. Okay, so that will be affected. So that is called relative permittivity or dielectric constant. Suppose we have a force of vacuum 1 upon 4 pi epsilon naught Q1 Q2 upon R square, that is in vacuum or air. We have another when the same charges at same distance is kept in a medium, that is 1 upon 4 pi epsilon. See the value of instead of epsilon I have epsilon naught, I have written here epsilon only because this value will change, Q1 Q2 upon R square. Now dividing this 1 by 2, will get the formula F vacuum upon F medium equals to epsilon upon epsilon naught. So this ratio epsilon upon epsilon naught is called K or epsilon R. So this is called relative permittivity and dielectric constant. That means this ratio, if you find this ratio, from this ratio you came to know how much force will increase or decrease. See, the value of K in vacuum or air is 1 and the value of K in water is 80. What does it mean? It means that if you find the value of the same force with same distance in water, the value is 1 by 80th time. Okay, the force becomes 1/80th time of the force when the same charges with same distance when it is kept in air. Okay, the similar force will becomes 1 by 80th time in the water. For example, if the charges, same amount of charges with same distance has a force of 80 Newton and the same charges with same distance is placed in water. So in vacuum the value is 80 and the value of K is 80, so 80 divided by 80, so the value becomes 1 Newton. That means 1 by 88 times, so it decreases by 88 time. Okay, so what important is dielectric constant or relative permittivity. So it is defined by K, either K or by epsilon R. So it gives how much force decreases or increases when you change the medium. So that is why this point is this ratio is very important in point of view finding the force in other medium other than air or vacuum. Okay.